Hi there, it's Angie, otherwise known as Punky Geek, and well, it's still just about International Women's Day when I'm recording this, and there's been a few items in the news concerning women this week that I wanted to comment on, so it seems like a good video to do that with. So I'm going to be talking about Pritti Patel, and I'm going to be talking about Keira Bells, and then I'm going to be talking about strippers, because why the hell not? It's all related, kind of. So, Pritti Patel. If you don't know who she is, she's a government minister in charge of, I think it is the Home Office. So, it's one of them, big roles. But unfortunately, people don't seem to be taken to her very well in there, or in any other job she has held as a government minister. Now, these are all allegations, and there's a big inquiry going to happen to find out whether the allegations are true or not. But basically, she's been accused of being a bit of a bully, belittling staff, shouting people down, orchestrating, plots to try and oust people. And if that is true, and I'm going to say that it's a big if, that's quite nasty and serious and, not very good. However, there was a viewer on Question Time who actually raised a good point. I say a viewer, it was an audience member on last Thursday's Question Time. And that was, it was basically to paraphrase, those are the kind of traits in men that are seen as a positive thing. Determined go-getter, that kind of thing. Shouting at people when you're a man seems to be acceptable. Shouting at people when you're the boss and as a woman is deemed to be unacceptable. And I thought that was an interesting point. I mean, obviously, in this case, I guess I kind of agree with Boris when he's showing us support because innocent until proven guilty. But it did make me think, about how women in authority are still seen as, well, if they do show traits of dominance like a man does, it's seen as unsightly and, not wanted. But if they're not, and they're kind and not shouty and more, I guess, hands-on in a way, they're seen as weak. And that's a thing that society possibly needs to look at, sort its head out, and we need to change that. But again, it goes the same for men as well. If a man was seen to be acting kind and nice and, getting stuck in and not acting dominant, that would also be seen as weakness and ungentle and unmanly. So there is that sort of hypocrisy we have in society that maybe needs to be looked at. Next news story. Keira Bells. If you don't know who she is, look at you. I say that sarcastically. It's probably not the place for it. Basically, I heard this on Jeremy Vine. I think it was Wednesday just gone, and it was a news item about how, now let's get this straight, she is being added to a case against the Tavistock clinic, which is where the NHS sends people who are under the age of 18 who have either gender dysphoria or are looking at wanting to transition. So it's youth services, and they can after a lot of time on waiting lists and then another year under the services of the clinic, be prescribed puberty blockers. But that's as far as it goes of concerns to transitioning. So Keira Bells was a former patient of the Tavistock clinic who has some regrets about transitioning. And she feels that she wasn't questioned enough at the time before she started puberty blockers. I've never been a patient at the Tavistock clinic, although I do not necessarily identify as the gender as I present as. I never felt the need to go get that treatment. But she did, and now she transitioned from female to male, and now she's detransitioned and has gone back to her female self. And you know what? That's fine and good. And maybe at the time she was seeking a treatment, she wasn't asked enough questions or wasn't challenged enough. But can we please get this for the love of all that, whatever your religion is and whoever your religious leader is, or if you're not religious, dog, get this straight. Kids are not going to this clinic and having their bits removed. They're going to this clinic to get the help that they need at the time. And studies have shown that getting put on puberty blockers prevents transgender kids from committing suicide. Isn't that a good thing, especially if they do decide later on down the line that actually the gender that they were born with was actually the right gender for them? It is reversible as long as they have just took the puberty blockers and haven't had any operations done. I'm thinking in the case of male to female, but even then, transgender people have to go through a whole lot of loops before they're allowed to transition. They have to, in the case of a transgender teen, get on the waiting list for Tavistock, and that's a process in itself. They then spend up to 2 years on that waiting list because, the fact that people are spending 2 years on that waiting list before they even get an appointment shows that there is a need out there, and that there is also, this is something that they deeply want to do if they're waiting for 2 years and not taking themselves off the waiting list. And then, once they get there, they have to spend a year under the getting treatment before they're given puberty blockers or whatever else that Tavistock clinic deem appropriate treatment. Of course, all the transphobes out there took Keira's case, and oh my god, the articles I've read this week is beyond belief. Can we just get some context here, please? For the vast majority of people, transitioning is the right thing to do. There is going to be that small minority where it turns out it isn't the right thing to do. But they are a small percentage. And so, can we give trans people a break, please, and stop being such bigots and awful towards them? Trans rights are human rights at the end of the day, and if putting a child on puberty blockers saves that child's life, isn't that a good thing? In this time of Caroline Flack and the whole be kind thing, it just makes me sad that there is kids out there who desperately need that help, and when they're seeking it, they're getting all of this sort of grief from people on the internet, and in some cases even people that they know in real life being transphobic and saying really horrible things towards them. Just knock it off, people. You don't necessarily have to agree with it, but don't voice your damn opinion about it. If you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. So there is that. And then finally, in the news this week, just came out today actually, strippers are going to be recognised as workers for the first time. I was shocked when I read that. Not necessarily because I think it's a bad thing that they're getting recognised as workers for the first time. I already thought they were. legitimately. You know, they pay tax, they have bosses, they have customers, as it were. You know, anything that can keep people safe, especially if they are choosing to go into sex work, either because they really want to work in that industry or circumstances have led them down that path, be it benefit cuts or it's the only job that they could get, then we should be protecting women and men who go into that line of work. And this court case today, and I will link an article about it that was shared on Twitter by a famous lawyer whose name escapes me right now because it's quite late. Anything that can keep people working in the sex industry safe, because let's face it, it's the oldest industry for a reason. There is a demand out there for it. People are willing to go into it or forced into it. I mean, if people are willing to go into it and it's serving a need, then more power to them. Obviously, if people are forced into it, such as prostitution or other, prostitution because they have fell into like drugs and their pimp is forcing them to do it, as an example, that definitely still needs to be addressed. Don't get me wrong. But if people are choosing to do this, and it is a legitimate choice that they are making, why are we not recognising them as legitimate workers? And why haven't we got them protections in place and that legal standing in place already? Come on, people, it's 2020. We need to be doing better about this. And you can have all your moral arguments for and against it, but at the end of the day, people are working in these industries and they need looking after. So why do I think all three stories are linked? I'll get onto that in a second, if you bear with us a moment. So, now that I've blown my nose off camera because that would be gross, why do I think all three stories are linked? Firstly, it's about how women are seen, and how also women perceive themselves and other women, but also how society perceive women and how women perceive society, I guess. People have worked damn hard. Women have worked damn hard, to get into these government jobs, and especially when it is in a man's world. And there is women starting to break that glass ceiling in what is predominantly a man's world still, and that should be celebrated no matter what your politics are. These women, in theory, being in Parliament should be getting rights through that help protect women, but also men, and make things more equal. Whether that is actually happening or not, you can argue for and against, and that's a different video. But the fact that there is women in Parliament now, and women getting these powerful jobs, such as Prime Minister, such as Home Secretary, no matter what your politics are, that should be something that should be celebrated, because, 10, 20, 30 years ago, that would be unheard of. So we are moving forward as a society, and that is great. We now need to do the same for transgender rights, and we now need to do the same for sex workers' rights and protections. But even though them women in Parliament are doing their jobs, whether they're doing it well or not, I'll leave you to decide that one for yourself. I've lost my thread of thought. Women in Parliament, they're still getting grief. They're still getting slack. They're still being shouted down and bullied by other politicians, let alone society, let alone their constituents. We need to be doing better as a society. We definitely need to be doing better as a society towards transgender rights. I guess transgender rights now is like gay rights, where in the dark ages, we've accepted, as a society, mostly accepted gay people for who they are, and there's nothing wrong with being gay. You're born that way, allegedly. Look, I say allegedly. Go back to the Philip Schofield video if you want an explanation for that. It's called eugenics. Epigenetics, even. Sorry, not eugenics. That is something entirely different and nasty. Go for the Philip Schofield video if you want that explaining. But yeah, gender is just a concept at the end of the day, and if we have the ability to help people be in their right bodies, we should be using that. And people should just get over themselves and let people live their lives how they want to do. Especially when it comes to sex work. Why have we still got that stigma when we should be making people who work in the sex industry safe? And this court case, the result of this court case is a good step in doing that, but we've still got a long way to go. And as feminists, I don't know, rather than arguing amongst ourselves about like whether transgender women are actually women, because yes they are, get over it, and whether they should be allowed in female only places, yes they should be, get over it. We need to be, making the world fairer for everyone, and that includes sex workers. Anyways, I've been Ange. I've rambled on long enough. If you've got to the end of this video, fantastic. Please give it a thumbs up if you agree. Give it a thumbs down if you disagree. It's all good feedback for me. Click that subscribe button if you wanna. And I will see you next time. For now, bye bye.